and welcome to the first advanced level podcast of the Irish accent. I hope you're all keeping well. As this is an advanced level podcast, I'm going to be speaking at a completely normal pace, using all of the vocabulary and grammar structures that I would use in my daily life here. I hope this will be very useful for anyone planning to live or work or study in Ireland, and who might want to practice listening to what real life conversation might sound like. If you have any issues with following along with this podcast, definitely check out the video version on YouTube, where you can follow along with the written version of this episode. I'm really looking forward to discussing today's topic, which, as you've probably seen from the title of this episode, is all about languages in Ireland. Do you know what is Ireland's official language? Well, actually there are two. Both English and Irish are recognised as the official languages of Ireland. When I travel, or when I'm chatting with my international friends, I find that people are normally very surprised to hear that Ireland has its own language. Most people assume that English is the only language here, and I often get questions like, oh, is Irish just English spoken in an Irish accent? And is Irish pretty much the same as English? The answer to both questions being no. So first, to run you through a quick history of the Irish language. So Irish is actually one of the oldest written and historical languages in the world, which I was even surprised to find out. The first example of it can be seen in Ogham form in the 5th century. Now, I'm sure not many of you will know what Ogham is, but Ogham, which is spelled O-G-H-A-M, for any of you listening, is an ancient written language that was used in Ireland and parts of the UK between the 5th and 9th centuries. The Ogham alphabet is the earliest known form of writing in Ireland and is seen as the first intellectual creation of Irish-speaking people. Irish is a Celtic language, and fun fact, its sister languages are Scottish Gaelic and Manx, which is from the Isle of Man, and its more distant cousins are Welsh, Breton and Cornish. It's thought that the first speakers of Irish probably arrived here from mainland Europe over 2,500 years ago. There were definitely other languages spoken here before Irish, but by the start of the Christian era, Irish was spoken all over Ireland and was actually spreading through Scotland, the west coast of Britain and the Isle of Man. As I mentioned, the oldest remains of ancient Irish that we have are inscriptions on Ogham stones from the 5th and 6th centuries. Old Irish was first written in the Roman alphabet before the beginning of the 7th century, which makes Irish the oldest written vernacular language north of the Alps. We also have many manuscripts that survive from the Middle Irish period, which dates from about 900 to 1200 AD. Then, at the beginning of the 12th century, the Anglo-Normans, or the medieval ruling English, began settling in Ireland. With this conquest came a period of multilingualism in Ireland, but actually Irish was still the most commonly used language, and gradually the Normans began to speak Irish. So by the start of the 16th century, most of the people of Ireland were Irish speakers again. However, although the majority of people spoke Irish, English was unfortunately necessary for administrative and legal affairs, and Irish therefore never became an administrative language. The result of this was that the Irish-speaking community never achieved political independence again, and the status of Irish as a major language was lost. In the 17th and early 18th century, the ruling Protestant English brought in a series of laws known as the Penal Laws, and one of these laws dictated that Catholics could not write or speak Irish. From the middle of the 18th century, the penal laws were relaxed, and it became possible for the native Irish to grow their wealth and participate in the social class somewhat. Therefore, the wealthier members of the Irish-speaking community began to adapt to English society and speak English. This increased during and after the Great Famine, and by that point, Irish as a language was almost dead. So, where does that leave Irish as a language today? Well, although Irish has never really been used widely in Ireland as a spoken language since then, at the start of the 18th century, scholars started to become interested in the language and in its literature, as they realised that it was in massive decline. In 1843, Thomas Davis, who was a famous Irish writer, publicly declared that Irish is a national language. This terminology was again used in the constitutions of 1922 and 1937. The Society for the Preservation of the Irish Language, which was established in 1876, managed to ensure that Irish was taught at every level of the education system in Ireland. There are still some regions in Ireland known as Gaeltacht regions, and in these regions Irish is the language of the community. As per Wikipedia, a Gaeltacht is a district of Ireland where the Irish government recognises that the Irish language is the predominant vernacular, or language used. So people living in Gaeltacht regions still speak Irish fluently and grew up speaking it amongst themselves. However, in the rest of the country, people grow up speaking English as their first language and only learn Irish in school as a second language. According to a 2016 statistic, 1.77 million people in the Republic of Ireland can speak Irish. In my case, I'm not from a Gaeltacht region, so I grew up speaking English as my first language. However, my parents have always been really interested in Irish and recognised its importance as part of our culture. So since I was young, they tried to encourage me and my siblings to use Irish at home, and we sometimes spoke Irish all together as a family. I started learning Irish in primary school at age 4, and I actually went to an Irish-speaking secondary school. Most schools in Ireland are taught through English, but some schools are taught through Irish, and because of my parents' interest in the language, I went to one of these schools. This means I learned all of my subjects, from maths and science to history and art, through Irish, and took my exams through Irish too. It was difficult at the start, but it meant I never found Irish exams difficult, and I always got good marks in my Irish exams, which was great. I'm really grateful I had the opportunity to go to an Irish-speaking school, because I really don't think I would have the same ability to speak the language if I hadn't gone to one. For example, a lot of my friends went to regular English-speaking schools and just learned Irish in their Irish class each week, and they now find it very difficult to actually speak the language. Actually, a lot of these friends found Irish really difficult in school and hated studying it for exams, and now they naturally have a very negative perception of the language. I think there's a huge problem with how the language is taught in schools, and I think that will have to change if we want to preserve the language moving forward. But perhaps that's a topic for another day, as I think in general our approach to language learning is quite old-fashioned, and I'm very interested in new and different methods of acquiring a second language these days. Language is obviously such an important part of any culture, and I really do feel like it's such a pity that we've essentially lost our language. I mean, I would be lying if I said that speaking English as my first language hasn't come in very useful at times. For example, as a native speaker, it's allowed me to teach internationally, and as English is the most widely spoken language for international business, speaking it fluently has been very advantageous professionally. But all that being said, I really do wish that our own language was more embedded into our everyday lives and played a stronger role in our culture. There's lots more I could say about this topic, but I'll leave it here for today, as this episode is already getting quite long. I really hope you found this interesting and perhaps learned something new today. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and I'm looking forward to chatting to you again next week. Bye-bye!